Hello and welcome to AI news that you should know about. I'm your host, Ashley Coffey.
And I'm Daniel Hill. Every week, in about 15 minutes, we cover the AI news stories that you need to know about. This week, we'll be talking about Meta launching Instagram for iPad OS, 15 years after Instagram launched. We'll also talk about Google's stock jumping 8% after getting told that the antitrust case is not going to end in the worst case scenario that they were prepared for. We'll also talk about Apple's plans for an AI powered web search tool using Google. We'll get into that and what I've learned after a year of wearing Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses. We'll get into all of that, but first, we'll be hearing a quick word from our sponsors.
Welcome back. Let's dive into today's story. So, our top story this week, Meta launches an Instagram app for iPad, a little 15 years too late. It's finally made its debut, but now it's here. If you don't have an iPad, just know that if you did download the Instagram app, you would have to turn it vertically to get it to it needs only like a black screen with a small amount of pictures to look at. So, this is huge, but now that everyone has kind of passed that, this is old news, is what I'm saying, even though it is new news. So good stuff there. Congrats to Meta on finally doing this. Let's hope it doesn't take 15 years next time. What do you think, Daniel?
It's interesting the way they've changed this app to function differently than how it functions on a phone. So when you open up the Instagram on iPad now, you'll start with the Reels feed, which I think is an interesting change. And they're kind of saying, hey, we know the iPad is more of a consuming device. Therefore, let's take you right to the content that we want you to consume. And I think that's kind of taking a play from TikTok's playbook. When you open up TikTok, it takes you right to the For You feed. You're going to see something amazing in the first 20 seconds, hopefully, and that's going to get you hooked. So that's interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, that right there, we could have a whole episode on just the For You page between Instagram and TikTok. But you're right. I feel like this is a shift to appease the people that are strictly consuming rather than participating, I would say. Like they want to view things in a bigger screen format, or maybe people that are wanting to be more mobile without their phone can, use their iPad now. So to me, I'm just like, why didn't I need to know from Mark Zuckerberg? Why did this take so long? Why?
Why now? Right? That's the question I was wondering.
Yeah, why
If
now?
you if you are listening and you are not an iPad user, if you're a Windows user, just a reminder, there is an Instagram app for Windows. If you have a Microsoft Surface or any other kind of Windows tablet, you have always had access to an Instagram app. And if you don't have any of these kinds of devices, you can always use Instagram from the browser by going to Instagram.com, and you get almost a full experience, not 100%, but almost there. So those are other options if you're feeling left out because you don't have an iPad.
Thank you for mentioning that, Daniel, our resident Android and Windows advocate. We want to make it fair here. So yeah, good stuff there. Next up, we have Google's stock jumps 8% after the search giant avoids a worst case penalties and antitrust case. Let's talk through it. So I've been following this for a while, and to get everyone up to speed, essentially Google was at risk of being required to sell off Google Chrome because of being a monopoly in the search area. So after a lot of back and forth, a federal judge ruled that Google can keep its Chrome browser, but will be barred from exclusive contracts. And this is starting to split from some traditional tech collaboration and partnerships that we've seen in the early days. For example, how, Google had a partnership with Apple when the Apple iPhone came out, it used Google Maps. This data sharing is here. And this actually comes 1 year after a judge ruled that Google illegally held a monopoly in internet search in this landmark case. And if people forgot, Google pays Apple billions per year to be the default search engine on iPhones, and shares of the iPhone maker, Apple, rose 4% after hours. And yes, this is a thing, just so you know, everyone that has an Apple phone, you can go change the default search engine if you want, like to DuckDuckGo or anything else you want. But out of the box, it's going to default to Google. And this is going to change. So I'm interested to see if this impacts anything else. But to put into perspective, this antitrust trial started in September of 2023. is now September of 2025. It's taken a couple of years. Honestly, I feel like that's pretty fast for something like this. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
I'm interested to see what you mentioned about how potentially the default search engine on iPhones could change because I know Google pays Firefox to be the default search engine on Firefox as well. And I'm a Firefox user, so I pay attention to that. We want competition, right? If you use Chrome, there should be other options completely separate from Chrome. The fact that Google is financing those other options, I'm interested to see whether or not this is going to change, like you mentioned, how it could impact what the default search engine is on iPhones. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on this as it moves forward too.
But even with all of this, there will still be people that open up Google and type in Google.
Of course. Of course. And they may have been doing that for 20 years, and that's totally fine, but
Yeah,
you should have the option of picking what platform you want to use and what way you want to search and who gets to see your data because of it, right? I
I
use
agree.
DuckDuckGo, and I know DuckDuckGo is just using Bing, but the point is that Google does not see what I'm searching, right? And to me that's important, but to someone else that's not important. So it's totally fine whichever route you go, whichever platform you think or search engine gives you the answers that you are looking for, that's totally fine. But you should have an option to be able to pick which one you want.
That's right. We want to exercise our free will when we can. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be talking about Apple plans AI powered web search tool for Siri to rival OpenAI and Perplexity, and what I've learned after nearly a year of wearing Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses. This is from Lifehacker. So stay tuned.
Welcome back. Let's continue with our stories. We'll talk about Apple's plans to roll out an AI powered web search tool for Siri. Apple is working on a tool which they're internally calling World Knowledge Answers that's going to be integrated into Siri. Apple has also discussed adding this technology to Safari on the web browser and Spotlight, which you could use to search from the iPhone home screen. This product is going to be what some people are calling an answer engine, a complete overhaul to Siri. But the goal here is to make this a way that users can look up information quickly, similar to the way people are using ChatGPT today. The plan is that the information will come from an LLM, but the key part here is that Siri's LLM could be powered by Google. So what Gemini has built, it seems like Apple wants to borrow and use to save them building out their own entire platform. Now, I think about this from two different ways. First, Google obviously is a major player. Apple has all the money and resources that could potentially be available to any company ever. They're sitting on trillions of dollars of cash to build their own, but yet they've said what Google has is good enough that we want to partner, pay for it, lease it, rent it, whatever. And that says a lot to me. Ashley, what do you think?
I just want my Siri to actually work when I use it. I'm going to talk about basics, but I think this is interesting and it reminds me of Apple's chips that came out when they decided, okay, we no longer need Intel chips. We're going to use M chips. There's M1 and M2. And that is similar to building that internal ecosystem to rely less on other tools. And I think we're kind of seeing this happen more often where we had this wild west of the internet and things kind of got reeled in. And now it's too railed in, so it's reeling back out. And it's kind of it's an interesting thing to watch, but I'll be interested to see where it goes, especially with Apple's event coming up, I believe, next week.
This is also interesting to me in the same way that you talked about earlier, where Apple uses Google for search. Does this make sense for Apple to use Google for continuing for the foreseeable future instead of building their own product internally and owning it end to end? And that's something I can't quite understand why a company with so much available resources would, I don't want to say give away the farm because that's not exactly it, but why they would bring in a partner as big as Google when they could build it on their own. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ashley?
I do. I think there are certain elements in which Apple gets further along into the process where they realize this is not the space for us. For example, car, like Apple Car was a big deal for a while
Mm.
until it wasn't. And I think, of course, there was a lot of things to do with that, but Apple's always going to be innovative and try to do things that other companies aren't. This feels like a long-term play versus a short-term play for obvious reasons of ownership I would say, but also these deeply held ties between Google and Apple. So it'd be interesting to see where it goes. But I agree with you of having choice.
Yeah, and it's a good point you make. Apple knows when to cut their losses and say, this isn't a product that we want to spend time investing, building, whatever. Let's bring in the people who know what they're doing or focus on other areas. And I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah, I like to think of the term do what you do best and hire out the rest. And this is a good
Right.
example of that.
Right. Let's move on to our last story. It's from Lifehacker. The title, What I Learned After Nearly a Year of Wearing Ray-Ban Meta Smart Glasses. And before I get into this article, I just want to focus on the core pros because there were some things about the Meta Smart Glasses that they can do that I actually didn't realize. And that's why I picked this article. As I was reading it and the author was going through different use cases that he or she have used the Meta Ray-Bans in, it really opened my eyes to what was possible. And the main one I wanted to focus on was language translation. In the article, they mentioned that Meta recently rolled out the ability to translate from Spanish, French, and Italian to English and vice versa. The author said that they tested it out with a Spanish speaking person, and it was really good. The glasses were able to translate spoken words in a conversation at real time with a surprisingly high amount of accuracy. The author also watched a graduation speech delivered in Spanish, and it translated perfectly. They tried with some telenovelas on YouTube, flawless, and they said language translation might prove to be Smart Glasses' killer app. As someone who did not know what the killer app of Smart Glasses was up until this moment, that really struck me. I'm curious, Ashley, have you used the Meta Ray-Bans for any language translation? And if so, what has been your experience?
Yes, it's been exactly this. It's been a positive experience. It's a great tool. And when they rolled it out a few months ago, I was happy to hear that because they're baking in these really heavy hitter use cases, that being one of them. And second, the partnership with Be My Eyes, where volunteers can audibly share what a user is seeing if they're blind or low vision. So it's great. If I'm going to be in New York City, I have my Meta Ray Bans, I can integrate within Be My Eyes and they're seeing live stream what I'm seeing through the Meta Ray Ban. So I think that's a great feature. And it's free too, which is nice. So the language translation is amazing, but it also takes your battery life down a lot because you're using more of that horsepower. So I do think we need to see Meta ramp up some of the power capabilities of some of the devices. I know the new Oakley Ray-Bans or the Oakley Meta smart glasses have 8 hours of battery life now. And that's, assuming you're not really using it too much throughout the day. But this would be the number one use case, I would say, if you had to simplify the benefits of smart glasses, besides the camera and video.
I think that was a really interesting way to think about it because I've certainly been in situations where I don't speak the language. Everyone around me is speaking a different language. I don't know what's going on. But to your point, if you have to charge them halfway through the conversation, halfway through the day, if those are your prescription glasses and you need them for the situation and you can't see now because you're charging them, that's not great. Nice to know that they're working on, the battery life and improving that. But I thought that was a really good take.
Yeah.
The cons part of the article, he mentioned that more than one person who saw him wearing the Meta Ray-Bans asked, are you taking pictures of me? And that kind of started off conversations about surveillance, Meta's motives, and people felt uncomfortable around that. How have you handled that conversation? Has anyone said to you, oh, are those Meta smart glasses? Are you recording me right now? And how do you handle it?
So, one, I'm glad that we're having this conversation because there's a lot of misconceptions out there about this, understandably so, because the perception makes it seem like the classes are always on and they're always recording. Technology is not there yet, you guys. And there is a proximity sensor that is built into the headset device. And if that proximity sensor is blocked with a sticker or a piece of tape or a piece of paper, it will not take a photo. And there's an indicator light. An indicator light is a bright blue LED that flashes whenever you take, it's not a flash, it's just notification that you're taking a photo. If you're taking a video, it will stay persistently glowing when it's recording, signaling that it's recording. Now, I saw an article that surfaced somewhere about an influencer in New York, a TikToker. She went to her waxing appointment and noticed that her waxing lady was wearing Meta Ray Bans, and she was asking, like, "Are you like, are you taking photos? And of course she's not. But the thing is, these Meta Ray-Bans, some people use them as prescription glasses. And there might be instances where you need to wear them and you're not going to be using the glasses to take pictures or videos. But this is such a new technology that people are having a hard time wrapping their heads around that yes, it's a camera, but just because it's a camera doesn't mean it's persistently recording you. And there was someone trying to sell stickers on the TikTok store to block those, and they got kicked off the TikTok store because of that and because they don't work, is what I'm trying to say. So I hope people maybe listen a little bit more and educate themselves on what to look for if they are uncomfortable with being recorded. And that also goes into like, depending on the state that you're in, there's different laws of like one party consent versus two party consent. But yeah, that's how I handle it is I let them know, like, no, I'm not recording you. These would have to be really mega glasses to be recording all the time. I have to store it somewhere if they keep 4K footage. So I let them know, no, I'm not recording you. If I were recording you, I show them what it looks like when I record so they can see the example. And that helps alleviate some of the anxiety. But just like when e-cigarettes came around, it took a long time for businesses to start putting that in like no smoking, including no e-cigarettes. So like no cameras, including smart glasses. And Google Glass was ahead of the time and we didn't even make it that far. So I'm interested to see what comes out of this over the next year.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic. And one of the reasons I'm asking these specific questions is in the Life Hacker article, they said Meta recently sent an email to Ray-Ban Meta users that said, in part, quote, Meta AI with camera use is always enabled on your glasses unless you turn off Hey Meta, end quote. And then they said, quote, the option to disable voice recordings storage is no longer available, end quote. So in the article, the author was saying Meta is basically vowing to look at whatever I'm looking at and store whatever I say. So the author even had some privacy concerns around that. He felt that he was too boring to care really about it. If Meta wanted to see hours of him folding laundry or playing video games, he doesn't care. But I think some people might care. And since you might be recording someone who may or may not be aware of how the glasses work or what they would be agreeing to by having you, in the same place as them, that's why I was talking about
Mm.
this topic. It's very interesting to me. And we're obviously going to keep talking about these topics because privacy is a real concern around this and people should feel comfortable. But by the same token, you're out in the world. Like I think we all have accepted when you're out in the world, people might be recording you and things can happen. And that's just what we expect now in this day and age. So it's an interesting conversation.
Thank you, Daniel. And I want to clarify that people know the difference between persistent and like forced. So like when you say persistent, being what I know what they're talking about here. For example, if I say, hey, Meta, remind me where I parked my car, it's using persistent view to I'm telling it to take a picture of whatever it is I'm looking at. And some of that stuff is transient. So it can be stored locally. Yes, Meta can access it, but I'm not going up to Tesla owners and asking them, are they recording me? It's like the same
True.
concept almost,
Yeah.
but we'll see where this goes. I'm really glad that you brought it up because it is an important conversation.
And that is it for our AI news that you should know about this week. You can find links to everything we've discussed in the show notes, and you can connect with us on social media. We'd love to hear what you think of the show, how we can make it better. You can find me at Daniel Hill Media on Instagram, Threads, and YouTube.
Awesome. And thanks for listening to today's episode of AI news that you should know about. Before we leave, we're trying a new fun thing of talking about the uses of how we used AI this week. And it's been kind of a flyby week because here in the US, we've had Labor Day, which is a holiday in which most banks are closed and businesses are closed. So it means everything else is condensed. So what I've been doing here is using the schedule task feature in ChatGPT to schedule future tasks. I'm already starting to plan for like Q1 of 25. So I want notifications at certain times in the future. So I'm just telling it to do that. It's a very basic rudimentary use, but simple sometimes is best. What about you, Daniel?
So I am actually working on a gift for a friend for their anniversary. And I took the husband's photos from when he was around 19, 20, and I asked ChatGPT to make mugshots out of them. And it did not work. It did not come out looking at all like my friend. I was a little bit disappointed. Chris, if you're listening, I've ruined the surprise. But I ended up finding someone who is much more skilled at Photoshop to make realistic images. So I tried with AI this week, didn't work out as well as I was hoping.
Well, it's okay. That's a good use, and that's a very thoughtful gift as well. So I'm sure your friend will be very happy when they receive it. Okay, love that. So, if you would like to share how you are using AI in your week, feel free to DM us. You can find me on Instagram at AshleyRCoffee89. And you can find my other podcast called Coffee and Code wherever you get your podcasts. But if you're interested about taking the next step of integrating AI into your business, reach out. I am the founder of Coffee and Consult, a technology consulting firm that helps small and medium sized businesses leverage tech for profitability and efficiency.
Thank you for listening and come back next week for more AI news that you should know about.